right? What is going on? We are back. So today we're going to talk about the scale again. I think I did a video recording on the scale a couple of weeks ago, maybe a few weeks ago, but this one's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to talk to you guys about how I lost pretty much 10 pounds in less than a week and how I gained it all back in one day. So this will be an interesting story. So the reason why I'm talking about this is because I was having a conversation with a client last week about the scale. Have a lot of conversations with one-on-one clients about the scale, but she had seen some kind of, big weight fluctuation, and, I was talking to her as to like why this might be happening and why it is, really common sometimes. And it got me to bringing up this example of how, like I said, myself, this was back in 2021, I believe. I was preparing for a powerlifting meet, and I had lost like 10 pounds a week leading into the meet, or in the week leading into the meet. And then the day of the meet, I literally gained all of it back, in actually a little bit more. And I talked about how this is really common in powerlifting, in weight class sports in general. And I actually think this conversation, now that I'm talking this out loud, stemmed from she was dealing with some constipation, and now this constipation is, alleviating. We tried some different things with kiwis, some supplements, all this kind of stuff, and it is kind of balancing itself out, which is good. I have a lot of conversations with with a lot of my clients regarding poop and constipation and digestion, which is like, clients always think it's like too much information sometimes when they first bring it up. And I'm like, no, this is like all connected with the human body. Like it's normal. There's nothing that is like TMI for me. And my wife, she's an OBGYN. So the stuff I've heard her coworkers talk about and her talk about, like, nothing surprises me. But I wanted to share the story and what I did too over this time period to lose this amount of weight and gain it all back. So if you're not familiar with powerlifting, there are certain weight classes, and with weight class sports, they have different weight classes, usually separated by maybe 20, 25 pounds each, because they want you to compete with people who are similar size as you, right? Because strength, when it comes to powerlifting, you're testing the squat, bench, and deadlift, seeing what your heaviest lifts you can lift in all three of those lifts are. And you want to be able to compare, people of similar body weights, because if like I went to bench press and they compared my bench press to somebody who weighs like 300 pounds, like, because they are so much bigger, they have a higher potential to lift more weight. So like the weight classes help to make the competition, fair between them. So there are different weight classes, and the weight class I was competing in with this meet was it was 205 at the time. So 205 pounds, or I think it was 93 kilos technically, kilograms. But 205 pounds was what I needed to be under. And I was consistently weighing around like 212 leading into that meet. That was kind of my weight that I was weighing in every single morning. The like few months leading up to it, that was kind of my normal hang around weight. And it's pretty common for people to compete at weight classes a little bit under than what they typically like walk around at. And usually around like 7 pounds is usually kind of the max. A lot of people end up hanging around above. Some people do a little bit more aggressive weight cuts with water manipulation and things, and sweating and dehydration and all that kind of stuff. But 7 pounds, I think from my experience, what I've kind of taken is kind of like where kind of the biggest jump people like to sit at. And it obviously depends on how heavy or small you are. If you're smaller, 7 pounds is a lot. If you're bigger, if you're 300 pounds, 7 pounds isn't really that much. But so I was hanging around 7 pounds higher than the weight class. So I needed to do a weight cut for this. And what a lot of people suspect is, if they're not familiar with this, is okay, like, you're going to have to bring calories down. You're going to have to eat super low amounts of food to lose 7 pounds of fat to get down to there. But that's not the case at all. You can manipulate your body weight so much by not even changing calories really at all, and just manipulating a few things. So the big key things that you can manipulate to change your body weight are how much water you're consuming, how much sodium you're consuming, and also how much fiber and just bulky food you're eating. Not in a sense of like calories, but just how much food volume. So think about like broccoli. A high amount of volume is a low amount of calories. So if I was gonna eat 500 calories of broccoli, that would probably be like 5 cups of broccoli. But if I'm gonna eat 500 calories of Skittles, that might only be like a quarter of a cup or half a cup of Skittles, or maybe even a full cup. But even then, it's still 5 times less, like the volume of food versus broccoli. So just from manipulating those things, the volume of food you're eating, how much fiber you're getting, which kind of ties into the volume of food. So I might describe those as kind of interchangeably, or the water intake and the sodium intake. Those are like the 3 big things. You can manipulate carbohydrate intake too quite a bit, and that can change your body weight, not body fat level, but body weight level quite a bit. So here's what, and I have it pulled up right here that I'm reading off of. Here's what my coach, because I had a powerlifting coach at the time. I still do now, but it's a different coach now. But here's what the protocol, or the plan the coach gave me, and this was just a week before the meet. So beginning of the week, we brought my calories down by about 200 compared to what they were. So really not by much. Like, you're not really going to lose body fat, not much at least, by bringing your calories down by a couple hundred from where they are at maintenance. So I was maintaining my weight at like 3,000 calories roughly. We brought my calories down to like 2,800 starting like the Monday before the meet, and I competed on Saturday. So not really a whole lot of fat loss happening there. And then Wednesday, around like 3 or 4 days before I competed, we brought my calories down by about another 150 compared to what they were before. So now I'm eating around 300, maybe 400 or so calories under what my maintenance is. And doing that for 4 days is not going to achieve any significant amount of fat loss. Like, I might have lost maybe a half a pound of fat, which, like I said in the beginning, I was like 7 pounds over the weight class limit. So like I had to lose a lot more than just a half a pound. So this change in calories that we did was not going to do it. And that's okay. Like, that was the purpose behind this, is because you don't want to deplete yourself of energy that you're trying to use, your body's trying to use for recovery to kind of prepare for this competition you have coming up. But here's what we did change. And this is what made a huge difference in my body weight and how I lost these 10 pounds over the span of a week or less than a week, which was starting Monday and Tuesday, I drank 2.5 gallons of water per day. Now, I know a goal that a lot of people aim for is about 1 gallon per day. Most of my clients, I recommend getting about 3/4 of a gallon, maybe up to 1 gallon if you're a little bit bigger of an individual. But honestly, 3/4 of a gallon, if you're eating plenty of fruits and vegetables, is good for most people. So I was drinking probably 3 times the amount of water that like anybody normally would like shoot for. That feels tough. 2.5 gallons of water for 2 days straight. And then what I did was on Wednesday then I went down to 2 gallons of water. So I brought that down by a half a gallon. And then on Thursday I stayed at 2 gallons of water, so I kept that the same. And then on Friday, the day before the meet, I cut all water out except for just sips if I felt like I needed it. So if I felt really thirsty, I'd have just a little swig, like a little sip of water, but that's it. Virtually nothing unless I felt like I really had to. And then the only other change I made besides that over this kind of time frame, over this 5-day period, I guess, from Monday through Friday, was I kept my sodium kind of as low as possible. So I looked at foods that I was eating that were really high in sodium and like more of the processed foods, whether it's like frozen chicken or Chipotle or even me just salting my food. Normally, if I'd make chicken, I cut that out and just had very trace amounts, very small amounts of sodium, kept that as minimal as possible. And the reason why you do that and why this worked, well, actually, let me keep going. So I did that, and I have some weights that I recorded, and I don't have them pulled up. I wish I did. But you can see my body weight go from like around 210 on Sunday before I started all this to around like 209, 208 on Monday. And then Tuesday, 208 again. Wednesday, 207. Thursday, 206. Friday, 205. So by just eliminating sodium, the excess sodium, and drinking more water, I actually lost about 4 to 5 pounds in around 4 or 5 days. Literally, calorie intake virtually, like, barely did not change at all. Literally just from keeping sodium minimal, not adding extra sodium, and drinking a ton, like 2 to 3 times more water than what, I'm typically used to drinking. And another change I made on Friday, or even like I think it was mostly just Friday actually when I think back, but probably most of the week, but let's just say Friday for sure, is I tried to eat as little volume of solid food as I could. So I was getting a lot of my protein from protein shakes or protein ice cream or yogurt, things that were like more liquidy to where the excess liquid that was in there would be kind of peed out. So like, I'm not going to pee out protein. Like a lot of people think if you have extra protein, your body's going to like urinate it out. Your body urinates waste products that come with breaking down protein, but you don't urinate protein calories. So your body will extract the calories, the protein from the protein shakes, but excrete the like fluids and stuff out. So by doing so, I was able to like maximize the amount of actual like nutrients and protein I was getting while minimizing the food in my digestive tract. So like if I were to eat a big like 10 ounces of chicken to get 60 grams of protein, that's going to cause more weight in my stomach moving around versus if I got 60 grams of protein from having like 2 Fairlife protein shakes. So I had more liquid calories, and that was one way to kind of keep flushing out my system through the fluids, but extract those nutrients still and those calories still. I also was having more calorie-dense sources of fats and carbs. So I was having things like honey, where there's a lot of calories for a small amount of honey. I was having things like peanut butter, where a small amount of peanut butter has a lot of calories. So I was manipulating how much volume of food I was eating, which is like, this strategy is kind of the opposite you want to do when you actually want to lose fat. When you want to lose body fat, you want to actually increase the volume of food so you feel more full. So you want to eat things like chicken, broccoli, egg whites, things that are a high volume of food with a low amount of calories. That's what you want to gear towards when you're actually aiming to lose body fat, because it's going to help you to feel full. So with your calories being lower, you're able to like manage it hunger wise. But I was doing the opposite. I was having very calorie dense sources and having a lot of liquid calories that don't really fill you up as much. But with my water intake being so high leading up to that, my body was getting used to flushing those fluids out. And that's one thing your body does, is it's very sensitive to how much water you're drinking and also how much sodium you're eating. So your body has this balance of sodium to fluid or sodium to water, where if you end up eating a high sodium meal, your body will adjust and hold on to more water to kind of balance that out. Now, if you have a low sodium meal and you keep your water the same, your body will actually end up like peeing out more water because it wants to keep these things balanced. Think about it as, I don't know, like what is it called? A seesaw. Like it wants it to be completely even. Now, it's not a perfect 1-to-1 ratio of like grams of water to sodium, but just for simplicity terms and when describing this, there's this balance, this equilibrium your body wants to keep. So the reason why bringing my water intake up and bringing my sodium down actually helped so much is because there are different hormones in the body that respond to this unequal balance of water and sodium. And when I brought my water intake up and I brought my sodium intake way down, my body's like, whoa, there is a big gap between how much water and fluid is coming in and how much sodium we have. There's a big difference in this balance. So we're going to try our best to eliminate that difference and bring things equal again. So what does the body have to do in order to do that? Well, it can't just create sodium out of nowhere. So the only way to create this balance, if my sodium intake is not changing and I'm keeping it low, is to excrete more water to bring that down. And it does that through a couple of hormones that then increase water excretion then. So if you have a really high sodium meal, your body's going to increase water retention to balance that out. But if you have a couple of really low sodium meals or even a whole week of low sodium, your body's going to increase water excretion. And on top of that, if you then increase your water, like double or triple it, something extreme like I was doing a week leading into that meet, it's going to increase your excretion even more. And the power of this when it comes to manipulating your body weight, especially for like a powerlifting meet or even like a wrestling meet or something, is that there's a delayed effect with this, where things are delayed by probably at least like 1 to 2, maybe even up to 3 days. So if you remember back when I was describing this, I drank basically a ton of water Monday through Thursday. Friday, cut it all out except for sips. But my body was still getting those signals and still on that delayed effect of, oh, we have way more water in our system than sodium. We got to pee out all this extra water. So on Friday, when I kept my water at literally pretty much zero, other than what I just needed to sip on, my body was just flushing out water, flushing out water, flushing out water. And then I ended up weighing in, I think, at like 2:01 the next morning, so Saturday morning. So between Friday and Saturday, I lost 4 total pounds, maybe even up to 5 on the actual scale before I weighed in. Huge difference in literally just 24 hours. And it was probably even less than 24 hours. And then if I look back from Monday, like I said, I started Monday at like 210, 209. So I lost 8 pounds in like 6 days, which is a huge amount of weight loss. But got to my meet, weighed in, stepped on the scale, was at 201. I actually did not even need to lose that much weight. Like, it probably would have been better for me to drink a little bit more water on Friday. So I just weighed in at 204. So like right under the weight class, but weighed in, met the weight requirement. And then after that, you get a period where, okay, like now you can eat, drink, whatever you want. Once you weigh in, you don't have to maintain that low weight for the competition. So, some people cut 10 pounds or so if they really want to and really dehydrate themselves. And then like, they're able to then just gain all that weight back, and they might actually compete 15 pounds heavier than what they were when they actually weighed in. So drank a bunch of water, drank a bunch of sodium to replenish that sodium I wasn't getting that week before, drank a bunch of water to replenish that water I lost from that Friday where I didn't drink and I was still excreting a lot, had some carbs, had some food and everything. And I think my first or my second lift, so I did squat, maybe bench. And this was probably after I weighed in, probably like 4 hours after I weighed in, and it was in the afternoon. And I weighed myself and I was like 212. So I was 201 when I weighed in, probably at like, I think like 10 in the morning. And at 2 p.m. or so, I was 212 up to 212 again, which is insane. So I'd gained over 10 pounds of just literally just like fluid, maybe a little bit of food volume in my system, but mostly just fluid in that short amount of time. And I can't remember what I weighed in like the next day, but I think I was around like 210, 212 again. And that was back to like my normal weight. So I tell this story just to show how big of an impact manipulations in your sodium and your water intake, and even a little bit in the food choices you make as far as how much volume they take up in your stomach, but even just water and sodium, how much those can impact the weight on the scale. And by hearing this, I hope you realize that like, while you're not going through these extreme differences and like, drinking 2.5 gallons of water and then cutting out water entirely or having these huge drops in sodium all of a sudden, there are still fluctuations day to day. You're not always drinking the exact amount of water likely. And even if you are, fluid you're getting from other food sources probably varies a little bit. Like fruits, vegetables, we get fluid from that. And that probably varies a little bit day to day. Your sodium intake, while it is maybe a little bit consistent, it probably does vary, at least by a few hundred milligrams per day. And that can cause changes on the scale, not to the extreme of like 10 pounds in a day, but easily cause a change in the scale of 1 pound per day, 1.5, 2, maybe even up to 3. So when you see a scale fluctuation of whether it's up or down by 0.5 pound, 0.8 pounds, 1 pound, 2 pounds even, don't freak out. Those fluctuations mean so little when it comes to like determining if your plan is working or not. What matters is the overall trend, and if that trend is trending and like moving in the right direction over time based on the goal that you have. And also, like this example I gave, I didn't do any like sweating. Like some people, you probably heard these stories of like people putting on like garbage bags and sweating, running, or sitting in the sauna or whatever. I didn't do any sweating or anything like that. Just from manipulating what I'm drinking, how much sodium I'm having. It was that dramatic of a difference. So keep that in mind. And there are other variables too that can come into play with you too, with hormone fluctuations. If you have a period, like where you are in your cycle, stress, sleep, inflammation from just how hard your training session was can cause differences in water retention. If you've gone to the bathroom or pooped or not, any of this stuff. So don't let the scale get to you. Realize that and I think once you, if you were to ever go through this process of manipulating your sodium and water mostly and not really changing calories at all and realizing I can literally gain or lose 10 pounds in a week and gain it right back in a day in a few hours. Once you've purposely done that in a controlled way, you're like, wow, the scale being up a half a pound from yesterday, that means nothing to me because I know how big of an impact water can make. So hopefully this was eye-opening to kind of hear the story and just how much those things can be impacted. And it's not to say the weight on the scale doesn't mean it means nothing, because it still is a useful tool sometimes, but you have to know how to use it, and you have to have someone level-headed, a coach or even yourself if you can be, that way, to really look at the data and look at the overall trend and get less attached to the day-to-day numbers. So hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next one.